Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reach Higher Convening webinar where we'll be going over the guidelines and procedures for the next convening, either regional or national. We are so pleased that you are joining us to advance measurement, mobilization, and moving forward in order to strengthen school counseling and college advising. Following the convening in Jacksonville, several states asked to host either a regional or national organizational summit to support the Reach Higher initiative. So the purpose of this webinar is to engage interested parties in a conversation about the guidelines and procedures that will have to be implemented in order to host a webinar. So today's conversation, and we do envision it being a conversation, will be to review the Reach Higher goals, provide an overview of the application process, and to outline procedures and expectations. I am joined today by Pat Martin and Laura Owens, as well as myself, Joyce Brown. We are all members of the National Consortium for School Counseling and Postsecondary Success. We are also joined by Stephanie Sproul, who is the Deputy Director of Reach Higher Initiative, and we do expect Greg Darnita to join us as well. So I will just start by reviewing the vision and goals of the Reach Higher Initiative. We could not be more excited to have the nation engaged in putting together processes and systems, collaborative processes and systems, in order to help more students reach for an education beyond high school. And so the Reach Higher goals include exposing students to college and career opportunities, understanding financial aid eligibility that could make college affordable, encouraging student academic planning and summer learning activities, and most importantly, supporting high school counselors who can help more kids get into college. So as we keep these goals in mind, they will help frame our conversation. On the screen, you can see the states who have requested to host a regional or national convening with the team leads. So welcome. We see several of you who are on the call already. This call will be recorded for future reference. At this time, I want to turn it over to Pat Martin, who will talk about some of the requirements for the convening and expectations. Pat. Pat Martin, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? You didn't
yes, go right ahead. We are on the first expectation slide, in case you couldn't hear the introduction.
Okay, I'm here. Now, the reason we're doing this, make sure that you understand, because you've done many conferences before, because we know you all and we know you've done many conferences. We just want to make sure that you understand what the expectations are if you are approved to do one of these, to use the title White House Convening in support of the First Lady's Reach Higher initiative. Expectation 1. As we look at this, we talk about what does it mean and what are we expecting that's different. Everything that you do in the conference, it has to reflect that you are supporting either at a minimum 2 of those goals that Joyce read in the first couple of slides about the 4 goals or vision for the Reach Higher initiative. What it says to us as a group is it's not about smorgasbord. It's not about just having a conference and doing whatever is important right now and the hot topic for right now. It's about focusing on at least 2 of those goals or visions that come out of the First Lady's Reach Higher initiative. Expectation 2. When you use this title, you must work to do this convening on your own. You have to secure the funding, which is something that we had to do when we worked on other convenings. It is not sponsored and funded by the White House or anybody from the department. The money to do this convening, which includes money that you'd have to spend for food, registration materials, facilities, whatever it costs, you have to take that on as the convener, if it's an organization or an institution or if it's a group. So the local convener must secure funding without using the White House name, meaning you don't use the White House name to say, give us money to do this because of the White House. You in your organization or your university is the one who is putting this on in your name or in your group's name. You are securing funding. Somebody's not just paying the whole bill for you under your organization or institution's name. We are expecting the White House, because that's what they expected for the other three that use the title, is that whatever is the agenda, the information that you're going to provide, it has to have highlight and reflect how this is going to impact students from low-income backgrounds. We have a listing there of all the kinds of ways we describe these young people, but it's the people in underserved populations, the people who are listed on almost every chart that we look at, the lowest numbers in college going on to post-secondary education. So there is a short list there in the group that we're talking about. So it's not a generic conference. It is about all students, but in the all-student metric, there has to be how this will impact and make a difference for our underserved student populations. Fourth expectation is a measure. And we keep talking about metrics all the way through, and other people who are going to follow me and talk about metrics will say things about it is not a conference that when it's over that there's not an expectation that people have made a commitment. But the commitment is not to be, I often say, as fuzzy. The commitment has to have solid, concrete metrics about what it is that you're going to work on change for, especially the underserved student population. Joyce?
Again, thanks, Pat. These are the metrics that we put forth in the Jacksonville convening to say that states were already out there doing the tracking. So we put them in here as you consider the outcomes, the measurable impact that the convening that you are going to organize will have. Please keep in mind that we want to drive participants to use and to make plans around this metric. These metrics are listed on the screen. And so we're going to go on to the application process. What we envision is that you will receive an application where you will outline what you're thinking about. In order to have the convening, we want to know what are your goals and how you will organize the convening sessions. So the application will contain several sections, which I will go over now. Starting with the application components, there are 8 basic components. There will be background information that you will provide, the location of your convening and the type, is it regional or national, your purpose and goals, participants who you expect to invite, the program content, how you will manage the convening, and what about sustainability and follow-up following the convening, because there will be a lot of ongoing work that will be done in the field. And then the state metrics and evidence that the convening attendees are continuing to measure impact on in underserved students. These are some key responsibilities. And I want everybody, Pat, Laura, and Stephanie, to kind of chime in here, because we want to be able to capture for you all of the tasks that are involved. And so we want you to understand that the work of this convening has to be managed by your convening team. So you're going to put together a group of people that are going to commit to doing this work together. And so we want you to start early, secure funding, determine budget needs, identify partners, determine the number of participants, identify a venue, establish a registration process, figure out the accommodations and the logistics, both for travel and staying at the convening site, developing convening materials, create follow-up reports, and then do the evaluation survey. And we'll talk more in depth about all of these processes, but these are key convening responsibilities. Anybody from the presenting team have anything to add here? It's a pretty good list to start with, I think. So, and this is very important. Who can help you do this work? We want you to understand that the lead organizers must manage and implement all facets of convening planning. The Reach Higher team is not robust, and so it's not a lot of assistance. It will be guidance, but it's not a lot of assistance. They cannot do the work on the ground. The organizers will have to take that on for themselves. Stephanie, do you want to weigh in here?
Thank you. Yes, so we want to share that the Department of Education nor the White House will be able to offer any specific support for the event itself, other than showing up. And even then, we can't commit necessarily to every single one, but we will do our best to attend and also to share our materials with you, including messages from the First Lady, the Secretary, from Eric, and someone else necessarily. And I apologize, I'm getting a ton of feedback, so it's strange hearing me talk. So, but yes, organizers will have to do all of the lead up and follow up for the event, including invitations, including securing your space. And we are also not able to fund any of the events, nor are we able to help you fundraise.
Great, Stephanie. Thank you. So let's look carefully at the sections of the application, which you will be receiving following this webinar. Section 1, just the background information, the institution sponsoring it, the organizations that may be collaborating with you, email, contact, phone, and also a secondary contact lead. This will facilitate information sharing between all parties, because once you begin this process, there will be lots of questions from the field. And typically they'll go to the lead person, but they also go to the Reach Higher team, and that team needs to be able to reach out to the ground level people for clarification and response. The convening information, again, are you going after a regional or a national convening? Section 3 is your statement of purpose. We want you to think really clearly about why you want to hold this convening. What do you expect to happen? What can be achieved by you bringing people together that cannot be achieved if the people just met on their own? And what would be the big 2 to 3 results that the convening attendees would walk away with? So we're very interested in people not just meeting to meet, but people meeting to move forward. And we want you to keep in mind the content areas which we see as the levers of change in order to strengthen school counseling and college advising. Counselor professional development, counselor leadership training, college and career readiness policy, higher ed pre-service in-service training, K-12 and higher ed partnerships, school counselor and college advising research, college and career readiness standards and credentialing, and forming strategic partnerships. Section 4 is identification of participants. We really want to strongly encourage you to engage teams of people, because collaboration is key. And so to the left, you see the role groups that we invited to the Jacksonville convening, because maybe you want to engage different role groups. Maybe you want to go in a different direction, but have key leadership people attend. What we're trying to get is state-level outcomes. And so who can make that happen is a consideration that your convening team should certainly put in place. We felt that these key titles were really instrumental, could really be instrumental in aligning systems and structures in order to get state-level outcomes. As you're figuring out participants, we want you to always consider those districts that have large numbers of underserved students, because if we're going to help students reach higher for something beyond high school, we know that many of the students sitting in those underserved school districts are not engaged in college and career readiness activities. So thinking about how we can impact that population is really important. Cross-sector dialogue was a valuable lesson that we learned from Jacksonville. People really enjoyed talking with people in similar roles. And so as you think about key leadership invitations also, and you start to do content creation, please consider the opportunities for like role groups to discuss their vision, their best practices, their barriers and challenges as a way to move this work forward. Section 5 is program development. We are going to ask for proposals that outline how you will develop the program, the convening program. Will it be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? What will the agenda look like? What speakers are you considering? How will the breakout sessions be organized? And how will you evaluate the work? Section 6 is conference management. You will be asked to submit plans to outline what would be your funding source for the convening, what food would you need to have for attendees, the facility, how many it will hold, printing and materials costs, who is going to manage the convening, will there be a support staff, how will you issue invitations, what about the registration process, what kind of pre-conference prep will you put together? Will there be templates, pre-readings? Will there be webinars? How will you get participants ready to attend and be ready to do the work once they arrive? And then sustaining efforts and follow-up. We announced at the Jacksonville convening that on our website we are tracking state progress. There are state folders to submit documents and evidence of their measuring. And we are pointing everyone back to our 5 areas. We're very interested in seeing what's happening on the ground in these 5 critical areas that we think will help support school counseling leadership in collaboration with strategic partners. And then moving forward, how will participants be focused on measuring and track results to support reach higher goals? And those are the 8 sections. And so as you consider the metrics, you should look at what your state, when they came to the convening, what metrics did they identify, and then how will this convening support the advancement to help your state achieve this goal and states across the nation achieve this goal if you're going for a national convening. There are lots of helpful hints, and I'd like to turn it over to Laura, who was, along with Trish Hatch, was the leads on the San Diego convening. Laura?
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on which coast you're on. We just tried to put down what we felt like might be some good things to think through. And I think, you know, as Joyce has gone through some of the slides, she's already talked about some of these things, but we thought it might be helpful in your planning. I think for many of you who've done large conferences, these things are probably no-brainers, but just to give you an idea of some of the things that we needed to plan for. So definitely, you know, in thinking about the convening, you want to start as early as you can in your planning so that you're not trying to do a lot of this at the last minute. It definitely takes a lot of time and a lot of coordination of effort, and so the sooner you can start, the better. You know, think about who you're going to partner with. Is there someone in your community, maybe an institution of higher ed is interested in sponsoring the event? They may be able to provide, you know, a venue. That certainly has been something that has worked for us in the previous convenings, was really to find a higher ed institution that wanted to partner, that could help facilitate some of the planning and actually covering some of the expense of the venue to be able to hold the convening. Really thinking strategically about who are the funders that might support your work. And I can't understate this piece. It takes a lot of time to coordinate and to reach out to funders, and they need a lot of time. Frequently, you know, funders have a board that they're responsible to going to get permission. Even if they're really interested and they want to sponsor the convening, there's steps, and sometimes those things take weeks or even months. So starting to think about that early and reaching out to folks who might be able to help fund the convening will just really help you in your planning process. The next thing was just some ideas about things you want to budget for. You know, organizationally, how are you going to cover all the work that needs to be done? Are you going to hire some clerical support? For those of you who might be coming from institutions of higher ed, do you have some doc students or graduate students or even undergraduate students who might be able to help with aspects of the convening? But these are things, you know, you want to think about. Are you going to need to pay someone? Are you going to be able to get volunteers to do it? Obviously the food, and we talked about, you know, are you planning on a breakfast? Are you going to cover anything during breaks? You know, lunch, are you going to try to do some type of reception? Is it going to be a cocktail reception? You know, everything from having to have the liquor license to all those kinds of, you know, details and the cost that comes with that. And then from a program management standpoint, really, you know, what are you going to do in terms of your marketing? How are you going to have folks register to attend your convening? Are you going to have, you know, someone who's overseeing the financial, you know, pieces of it, even the aspect of receiving, you know, a grant from a funder and doing those applications, and then the oversight for the budget piece. The logistics, I think it's really important to be thinking about what you're going to have to pay versus the things you're going to ask your attendees to pay. And then, you know, what's your cost going to be around your program? And on-site logistics, you know, the things like what are you going to provide to your attendees? Is there going to be live streaming for folks who cannot be there? And that actually is quite, at least in our experience, has been fairly expensive to cover the live streaming, but it's been something that folks have wanted and we've provided, and we've actually been able to archive, and we know that groups have been using that for future trainings and state level meetings. And so, you know, thinking about that, looking at the cost for that, how are you going to record it? Are you going to have a website that folks can go to get information? You know, is there someone who can sponsor that, or are you going to have to pay to set up a website? All the kinds of things that come with the supplies and materials, and what do you want to, you know, your pens, your lanyards, your name tags, just, you know, all of that, your program printing. And then for some places, you actually have to think about security. We were required at San Diego State University to pay for security. It was something that our university wouldn't allow us to have the event without security, but we know not every venue had to do that. So it's just something you want to look into. As well, you know, start early to think about who are all your partners. Think about who can help you organize the event, who can help you plan it. You know, it might be helpful to start with a list of tasks that need to be completed. Think about who can help you with those things, and as you start to plan this and put everything into place. And then, you know, make sure you've got representation as you're doing your planning from a variety of groups, you know, higher ed, your K-12, your school districts, your nonprofits. Are you reaching out to your college access groups? Who in the community might be really interested and willing to partner with you? Have you thought about, you know, engaging parents and students in the process? Just being really far-reaching and thinking about who could partner and be working with you on the convening, or even, you know, potentially be attending the convening. The registration process, I would say, you know, that you really want to think about how are you going to identify the participants. Is your process for registration going to be electronic? Is it by paper? Does that mean, you know, they're mailing it? Where is that getting mailed to? Who's collecting that and inputting all that information for you? I can tell you we had to look at electronic. There was just no other option for us based on our capacity to be able to support it, and being able to have a system that folks can go into and register really saved us hours and hours of time. You know, who's going to coordinate and answer all the questions about the event? Are you going to have an email, you know, special for that? Are you going to have a phone number? And then who's going to be the person, you know, who's answering and responding to that? And you do have to think about that. It's a lot of time, and I can tell you, everybody and anybody is going to want to attend. And so you're going to have to be able to answer lots of questions around logistics and registration, and you'll need to plan for someone to do that. From the venue perspective, really thinking about things like parking. How close is the parking? Is there an extra cost for parking? Is it available? And that's a big thing when you start to look at institutions of higher ed. Parking can be a big issue, and whether that facility is really going to be a good one or not. The location, really important to think about how close you are to an airport. If you're planning on doing one in a large state where folks would be traveling from far, that's an important thing to think about. Is it central to where most of the partners and the folks who would be attending, so that there's not extra cost there? In the venue, how many breakout rooms are you going to need? Do the breakout rooms have technology? Is there Wi-Fi available? You all that are on this call, I'm sure, as you have attended the previous convenings, you were on Wi-Fi. Some of you were working during the convening. I mean, there were things that were happening, and we know not everybody. Probably there were a lot of people who wouldn't have been able to be there had they not been able to multitask, and so it's just something that you want to think about. I already mentioned the live streaming, but some venues can do that and some can't. So if you're interested in that, it's part of your conversation around the venue. The accommodations and the logistic, I mentioned earlier the proximity to the airport. When you're looking at the accommodations, really, are you able to get kind of a wide array and price ranges? And folks have different ability in terms of what they can get, refunded for their costs. And so really thinking about, can you go to any local hotels and try to secure some discounted rates for attendance? That's helpful. If they're going to, you're going to pick a hotel, is parking included with the registration at the hotel? These are all questions that we received. And so thinking about all of that information, and then how are you going to get that information and instructions out to attendees about getting the hotels and all of the questions that come with that. Is, are there shuttles available? How easy will it be to get to the site? Are they going to need a car? All of those things. The website, just thinking, how are you going to advertise this? Are you planning to post all of it? Are you going to create, a frequently asked questions section? I can tell you from our experience that saved us a lot of hours to create that and have that available so that we could reference it and send people to that for certain questions that we got asked many, many times. And then, just thinking about your materials. What do you want to have? Are you going to do some things electronic? Are you going to do everything electronic? Do you want to have printed materials? Are you going to do both? And then, is someone going to help you designing your program? That's something, that we needed help with. We weren't program designers, and so we got help with that. Thinking about that in your planning. Is there someone who can do that for you? You're going to need to hire someone that, to do that. What kinds of posters do you want to have printed? Already mentioned the name tag piece. So another thing that you want to think about is there going to be a survey that's part of this? Are you going to want to survey any of your participants? What would you use as a platform to be able to do that? Is it going to cost you money? How are you going to disseminate sort of the results of any survey? Are you planning on sharing that? Or is it just for your planning committee purposes, so that as you continue your work going forward? And then, is there going to be a post-convening report? And that's something that we would like to see happen, so that that information can be disseminated to folks nationally, to other states, and regionally. Who's going to write that? And how are you going to get that disseminated out? And so these hopefully are just helpful hints. They're not sentencing. We thought would help you in your planning process.
The sites will be selected essentially based on opportunity, availability, and your proposal. So I wanted to say that approval of one event in one city does not mean that there will be a disapproval of another event. And we encourage you to keep this conversation going throughout the country at multiple events, and then we will participate as best we can. But we do want to keep track of what's going on in the field, who's hosting these events, what your events look like, and then also how we can support. There are ways that we will be able to help you, sometimes with either advertising, or advertising is a good word, but getting the message out, sharing some of our Reach Higher information and some of our Better Make Room information, and just making sure that you have the most up-to-date information. So though we've called this an approval process or an application process or even a selection process, it's really just a tool to help you better plan your event and understand our expectations, but then also very importantly our limitations, both because of the White House and also just because of our small staff and our time.
Okay, everyone, I have Greg on the line. He's not able to be at a computer, and so we don't have a dial-in number, and I don't know if you'll be able to hear him. So Greg, can you say a few words, and we'll see if this little process works.
I can hear you, Joyce. Had difficulty understanding Stephanie. Sorry about all this.
Can you all hear Greg? Can you all hear Greg?
Barely.
Barely. Oh, okay. This might not work then.
Stephanie can hear the talk for the two of us.
Okay.
I'll put it in as best I can. Sorry.
Okay. All right. If you just hang on, and we can convey questions if they come your way, Greg. Okay. So Stephanie, Greg says you'll hold it down. And at this point, we've given you a lot of information, and we'd like to entertain any questions you would have about any of the things that we've said. We do want to be a resource of answers for you today, and we're just so thankful that you're raising your hands to possibly take on this work. But the big takeaway is that it requires a lot of collaboration, organization, and time. And so if you have questions, please write them in the chat box. And then Laura, would you field the questions for us?
Certainly. So we have a question from June. She said, when do you want the regional or national meetings to occur?
So the question, I'll just repeat it for Greg, is when do we want the regional and national meetings to occur?
So they can occur on your schedule. I will say that it will be much easier to plan around your schedule than to try to plan around mine, Eric, or Greg's schedule, or definitely the First Lady's schedule or the Secretary's schedule. That being said, May and June are very busy months for us. That doesn't mean that we could not do something. It just means that those are busy months for us. March is a less busy month for us.
So I see that we have a question from Gilbert. Gilbert, can you type it into the chat box at the bottom? Do you see the chat box? While he's typing that, June asked another question. She said, with the national meeting being in the fall, do you see this as an annual fall event?
No. One being that we only have one fall left during the administration. So I hope that there will actually be one earlier than the fall, and potentially another one in the fall, but I would not hold until the fall to host your event.
And that question, Greg, was, does a convening have to be a fall event, and is it thought to be an annual event? And Stephanie is sharing no, because we only have one fall left.
Okay, got it.
There is a question, how many regional meetings do you want to host?
question, Greg, is how many regional meetings do we want to host?
I think it's less about quantity and more about quality.
I agree with that.
Greg agrees with that.
So we have a question from Joyce DeVos. She said, is there a hard deadline for the proposals?
Stephanie, is there a hard deadline, or Greg, is there a hard deadline for the proposals? Are we looking?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Is there a hard deadline?
I would say sooner is better, but I would like them to be, thoughtful. So I wouldn't rush one, and I know that some people already have theirs pretty much ready to roll. So the sooner the better, just so that we can plan out the calendar.
I don't see any other questions at this time. It looks like we're getting one typed.
While that's being typed, can you hear me, Laura? This is Pat.
I can.
Okay, while that's taking that question, I'm going to put something on the end of what Stephanie said about quality as opposed to quantity is the big issue. As I was listening just to give the presentation, I kept thinking in my mind that most of the people who we're talking to have done conferences many times over. And 90% of the stuff we put on the list is we put it there as a bullet or a helpful hint. You said, I know that. I know how to do that. I do this all the time. I know how to do that. I want to move back to something that I want you to think about. Underneath all of those things is something very, very new and very, very critical. And what is very, very new is the vision and goal has to be set before you even start thinking about who to invite. So it's not like invite them all and everybody comes. You have to have your vision and goal set, and you have to know what you're trying to achieve. So you have to know where you're going, so you have to invite the right people to get you there. So it's not like they all come. The second thing is we're asking for metrics. Everything we're talking about says don't have them come and talk about the fuzzy. Have them come and talk about very concrete data that they want to change in the state that has to do with college and career readiness, highlighting what is going to be done and how it's going to be done for underserved populations. If you ask, just bring speakers. We all know the best speakers in the world because we all go to 100 conferences. But you don't want to invite speakers who do wonderful jobs. You want to invite people who do wonderful jobs about the topics you're trying to reach. So you have to add on another layer, not a wonderful speaker, but a wonderful speaker who's going to highlight accelerate the kind of agenda that you're trying to achieve. So we're asking for a lot more when we talk about this wonderful opportunity to have a national or regional.
I think we just lost Pat there. I probably couldn't hear the end of what you said. We'll see if we can get her back. Thank you, Pat, for adding that. We do have one more question from June. She said, to clarify, you were looking to host regional meetings and a national meeting by December 2016. How do you define regional areas?
We don't. So I think it's whatever makes sense for you. So one team in Texas wanted to do sort of a statewide team, but bringing in multiple regions. I think that'd be sufficient considering Texas is so large. And then there's some folks in Massachusetts who want to bring together different teams from around the state. Again, I think that would be sufficient too. But then we've also heard that there may be a New England conversation or a conversation in the Great Lakes area. I think whatever makes sense for what's around in terms of your population and also in terms of travel.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there other questions?
Okay, well, Greg, do you want me to convey any thoughts to the group? I think we've exhausted all the questions. They've been great.
Well, hold on, Miss
one more question.
Her, not Joyce. I can hear her through my phone.
Did you hosting national or regional or state convening? And stay in touch with Stephanie and I. And also voter connect with the consortium. And 2016 will be a great year.
Okay, Greg just wants to convey his thanks and encourage everybody to stay in touch with Stephanie and himself and the consortium, and as you have continued questions about the convening, and that this just seems like it's going to be a great 2016 to move the work forward. I didn't hear your last comment.
Joyce?
Yes.
Joyce, there is one question, and I think it's a great question, so I want to make sure we get a chance to ask it.
Sure.
There's a question, what is the proposal deadline?
Question about the proposal deadline. I know Stephanie said sooner rather than later. I'm not sure if you have a hard deadline, Stephanie or Greg, for the people to submit their proposals.
No, I don't think we have a deadline. Keep in mind it's election year. So sooner rather than later, that's probably wise.
So Greg is saying that, sooner, and I don't know if sooner would be sometime following the beginning of the year, because it is an election year and people get busy and I guess, engaged in other work. So I think that's the sooner. I may be wrong, Stephanie and Greg. We want to say sometime very close to the beginning of the year.
Sooner the better.
He says sooner than better.
Yeah, sooner is better, but I will reiterate again that it's definitely quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that we will try to smash a whole bunch together just because of time. We do have a full calendar year, so you can keep that in mind.
Great. Any other questions?
There is an additional question. Can the event be built onto an already planned event?
Can
Yes.
the event be built onto an already planned event? Okay, Stephanie.
Yes, just let us know what that is.
That's it. I think we've answered all the questions, and I don't see any more coming through.
Okay. Well, thank everybody for their time, and this will be recorded. We should have it ready probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, and you can download it and share it with others and review the content. We so appreciate you and your willingness to support this very important work. Have a great holiday.